Typically it's raining, but I am cozy in here. I've shut both the doors and I'm ready to get planting. Got some very old kitchen scales which I've been keeping in my shed, so I want 350 grams of top dressing. That's it, that's fine. Just don't put too much in for luck, because it's like adding too much salt to your soup. Now, if you're using ground that you've used before, the plants that were here before would have helped themselves to the nutrients in the soil. So the first thing we've got to do is put those back. Now, of course, you can use water-on fertilizer and just feed your plants once a week. However, it's quite labour intensive and it can work out quite expensive. If you're just growing a few in pots, then that's perfectly fine. You'll have nutrients in the compost for about 6 to 8 weeks. I'm going to cover that with you properly, so we'll come back to that. But if you're planting in the ground, it is far cheaper and easier to use a slow release fertilizer that will take you until the end of their flowering time. Usually at most, I might feed them once, twice at a push if it's hot and we're watering a lot. But other than that, I just water them a couple of times with tomato food at the end. This fertiliser will get them all the way through until that point. So this is my homemade compost, and this we add for soil structure. So not particularly soil fertility, although there is some nutrients in it. We don't rely on it because it can be inconsistent depending on what it's made of. So this is going to add some very much needed moisture retaining properties to my sandy soil. But it's magic, because if you've got clay soil, it helps break the clay up as well. So it works either way. Either way, it's a good thing. Moving this lot out with the rake, and I'm removing anything we don't want, like a brick and a packet of hula hoops. So I've carefully taken them out of the cells, and you can see that they are ready now to move on. The problem you've got is if you leave them in too confined a space, then you affect the overall bloom. So if you try and squeeze too many into a bed or too into a pot even, the resulting flowers are much smaller because they're competing with each other for the nutrients. So you need to give them 22 centimetres of space no matter where you plant them. Isn't it incredible to think that those little corms are going to turn into these plants? These very same corms are now going to flower for us. I cannot even begin to tell you the pleasure that these flowers give me. Well, I am pretty thrilled with that. Makes all of the care and attention all winter so worth it. Mind you, I love it anyway because it gives you something to do all winter, and before you know it, it's spring and you've got flowers. A hole much bigger than the root of the plant, because we want the ground around these little delicate roots to be really loose so that they have absolutely no problems pushing through and making a new home. You'll notice that I'm planting them only ever so slightly deeper than they were in the tray, so maybe to about here. The reason for that is these particular plants will throw up their stems, their leaves and their flower stems from the base. So they don't want to be buried too deeply, otherwise they've got too far to come. As a reminder, you want to cut the stems all the way down to the floor, being careful that you don't catch any emerging buds, because Ranunculus shoot from the base. You see down there, these are the emerging buds. So this is the stem I'm going to cut, so I'm going to be really careful that I don't catch either of these stems, and then by removing the primary flower, I will divert all the plant's energy into maturing these new shoots. This is probably the ideal stage to get the longest vase life for cutting for the house. But if you prefer to just come and visit them in your garden, then you do what you want to do. This is the rose just coming through. Isn't it beautiful? It is absolute flower heaven in here. Look at those stems. This is the rose. Here he comes.
Am I?
Yes, he's coming in to help me. Our homemade compost is so full of, well, it's not weeds, it's full of tomatoes. So what we're going to do is we're going to put some topsoil just on the very top just to suppress the weeds, just like we do with the compost. But because it's so dry in here, topsoil is more moisture retentive than compost. So that's going to really help keep these Ranunculus moist, because they do not like drying out once they start blooming. There we go, done. Doesn't that look good? So I'm going to water everything in now. It's not going to be cold tonight, so they'll be absolutely fine. Then I'm going to put some slug pellets down. I did not see a single slug or snail in here. However, now I put a buffet down, they might suddenly turn up, mightn't they? Uninvited guests.